The mining planet Karth-9 was a hard and lonely place. Cold winds moved across the gray mountains, and the sky was always dark with dust from the mines. Thousands of tunnels ran deep under the ground like a giant maze. Most miners hated working there, but Daniel Carter did not mind. Daniel was a quiet human miner who liked silence. Down in the tunnels, there were no crowds, no loud cities, and no trouble. Only the sound of metal tools hitting rock and the slow hum of mining machines. That night, Daniel was working in Tunnel 47. His drilling machine pushed into the black stone, breaking it piece by piece. Sparks flew as the metal drill cut through the hard wall. The sound echoed through the narrow tunnel. Daniel wiped the sweat from his face and checked his scanner. The machine showed something strange inside the rock wall. A small empty space behind it. Probably just another hollow pocket, Daniel muttered to himself. That happened a lot in deep mines. He aimed the drill again and pushed it forward. The loud machine roared. Then suddenly, Daniel heard something. He stopped the drill. The tunnel became quiet. For a moment, nothing moved. Then he heard it again. A very soft sound. A cry. Daniel frowned. It sounded like a child crying. "That's impossible," he said quietly. There were no children on Karth-9. Only adult miners worked on the planet. The nearest city was hundreds of miles away. Daniel turned off his machine completely. Now the tunnel was silent. Then the sound came again. A small voice, weak, scared, crying. Daniel felt a cold feeling move down his back. Slowly, he picked up his mining lamp and walked toward the rock wall. The cry was coming from the other side. "Hello," Daniel called out. No answer. Only quiet crying. Now Daniel was sure. Something was trapped behind the wall. Maybe a worker stuck in a collapse. Maybe something worse. Daniel quickly grabbed a smaller cutting tool and started breaking the rock carefully. Pieces of stone fell to the ground as he opened a hole in the wall. Dust filled the air. After a few minutes, the rock suddenly cracked open. Behind it was a small hidden chamber. Daniel lifted his lamp and looked inside. At first he saw nothing, only darkness and dust. Then something moved. A small figure slowly stepped into the light. Daniel froze. It was a little girl. But she was not human. Her skin was pale silver. Her hair glowed softly like blue light. Her eyes were large and bright, shining like stars in the dark tunnel. She looked weak and dirty, like she had been hiding there for days. The small alien girl held a strange broken device in her hands. It blinked with weak blue lights. When she saw Daniel, she stepped back in fear. Daniel slowly knelt down so he would not look scary. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl watched him carefully. Her small body was shaking. Daniel could see she was hungry and tired. He slowly took a small water bottle from his belt and placed it on the ground. The girl stared at it for a moment. Then she walked forward and picked it up. She drank the water very slowly, like someone who had not had water in a long time. Daniel waited quietly. After a moment, the girl looked up at him. Her glowing blue eyes studied his face. She tilted her head slightly, like she was thinking about something very important. Then she asked a question. Her voice was soft and nervous. Are you my dad?" Daniel felt completely shocked. He had no idea what to say. What?" he said. The girl looked down at the broken device in her hands. "My mommy said, someone will find me," she whispered. "She said he will protect me." Daniel felt a strange feeling in his chest. Before he could say anything else, the scanner on his belt suddenly made a loud alarm sound. Beep, beep. A red warning message appeared on the small screen. Daniel looked down at it. His eyes widened. The screen showed words he had never seen before. "Warning, Royal DNA detected." Daniel stared at the little alien girl again. "Royal?" he whispered. But before he could understand what it meant, something else happened. Far above the planet, beyond the clouds of dust, huge shadows appeared in the sky. Massive alien warships slowly entered orbit around Karth 9. Their scanning systems began searching the planet's surface. They were looking for someone. And deep inside the mine, a lonely human miner was standing next to a lost alien girl. A girl the entire galaxy was searching for. Daniel Carter stared at the red warning on his scanner for several seconds. The small screen kept flashing the same message again and again. Warning: Royal DNA detected. Daniel slowly looked up at the little alien girl standing in front of him. She looked small and weak. Her silver skin was covered with dust from the mine, and her glowing blue hair was messy. She did not look like someone important. She looked like a lost child. The girl held the empty water bottle and looked at Daniel with nervous eyes. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly. Daniel quickly shook his head. No, you didn't," he said. He turned off the alarm on his scanner. The quiet sound of the mine returned again. Daniel stood up and looked around the small hidden chamber behind the wall. It was barely big enough for one person to sit inside. The ground was covered with small stones and broken metal pieces. The girl had been hiding there for a long time. Daniel felt a heavy feeling in his chest. "How long have you been here?" he asked. The girl thought for a moment. "I don't know," she said softly. "Maybe many sleeps," Daniel frowned. That could mean days, maybe even longer. He knelt down again, so he was closer to her height. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl looked at him for a moment before answering. "My name is Lumi," Daniel nodded slowly. "That's a nice name." Lumi looked down at the strange broken device in her hands. It was shaped like a small silver disc. Tiny lights blinked weakly across its surface. "My mommy gave me this," she said. Daniel pointed to the device. "What is it?" Lumi shook her head slowly. "I don't know. Mommy said I must keep it safe." Daniel studied the device carefully but did not touch it. Alien technology could be dangerous or valuable or both. He looked back at Lumi. "Where is your mother?" he asked gently. The question made Lumi very quiet. Her glowing blue eyes slowly filled with tears. "She told me to hide," Lumi whispered. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. "Hide from who?" Lumi looked toward the dark tunnel behind Daniel, like she was afraid someone was listening. "Bad people," she said. The words echoed softly in the empty mine. Daniel did not like the sound of that. Suddenly, a deep rumbling noise moved through the ground. Daniel felt the vibration in the rock walls. He quickly stood up and looked toward the tunnel entrance. "What was that?" Lumi asked, scared. Daniel walked a few steps forward and turned on his sky scanner. The small device connected to satellites above the planet. A map of Karth 9 appeared on the screen. Then several large red shapes appeared in orbit above the planet. Daniel's eyes widened. "Ships," he whispered. "Huge ships, warships. They were not mining ships. They were military." Daniel zoomed in on the signal. There were at least 12 massive alien warships slowly moving into position around the planet. Each one was larger than the mining station itself. "That's not good," Daniel muttered. Lumi looked at his worried face. "Are they the bad people?" she asked quietly. Daniel did not answer. He didn't know yet, but he had a bad feeling. Suddenly Lumi's strange silver device began to glow brighter. The small lights across its surface started blinking rapidly. Daniel stepped back. "What is it doing?" he asked. Lumi looked surprised. It never did that before. The device suddenly floated slightly above Lumi's hands. Blue light filled the small chamber. Then a hologram appeared in the air. Daniel jumped back in shock. A tall alien woman appeared in the glowing image. Her silver skin and bright blue eyes looked very similar to Lumi, but her face looked serious and strong. Lumi gasped. "Mommy!" The hologram woman looked straight forward as if she was speaking to someone far away. Her voice was calm but urgent. "If you are seeing this message, it means my daughter has been found." Daniel slowly stepped closer. The message continued. "The child you saved is Princess Lumi of the Azurian royal line." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Princess, the hologram continued speaking. She carries the last royal blood of our people. If our enemies capture her, they will control the future of our entire galaxy. Daniel felt the air grow heavy. This was far bigger than he expected. The message continued. To the one who protects her, please keep her safe. Trust no one. The hologram flickered. Our enemies are already searching. Then the image disappeared. The chamber returned to darkness. Lumi looked up at Daniel slowly. Her small voice was soft. Am I really a princess? Daniel did not know what to say. Before he could answer, a loud sound echoed from far above the mine. A deep metallic boom, then another. Daniel's scanner suddenly lit up with dozens of new signals. Dropships, many of them. They were landing across the mining colony. Daniel looked toward the dark tunnel entrance again. His voice was quiet but serious. They found the planet. Lumi stepped closer and grabbed his hand tightly. Her small voice trembled. Are you still my dad? Daniel looked down at the scared little alien girl. Then he looked at the scanner full of enemy signals. He took a deep breath. Things had just become very dangerous. The underground mine was quiet again, but the silence did not feel safe anymore. Daniel Carter stood near the tunnel entrance with his scanner in his hand. The screen was full of red signals moving across the surface of the planet. Enemy dropships were landing everywhere. Daniel counted quickly. 1, 2, 5, 10. Too many. They're spreading out, he muttered. The soldiers were not landing in one place. They were landing across the entire mining colony. That meant they were searching. Searching for someone. Behind him, Lumi sat on a small rock in the hidden chamber. Her small hands held the strange silver device that had shown the hologram message. The lights on it were now quiet again. She looked very small in the dark mine. Daniel walked back toward her. We can't stay here, he said. Lumi looked up at him. Why? Daniel knelt down beside her. Because the bad people are on the planet now. Her eyes grew wide. Are they looking for me? Daniel did not want to lie to her. Yes, he said quietly. Lumi looked down at the ground. Her glowing hair moved softly around her face. I didn't want to cause trouble, she whispered. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. This is not your fault, he said. Suddenly, his scanner made another soft sound. A new signal appeared. Daniel looked down quickly. Motion sensors. Something was moving inside the mine. Daniel's face became serious. They're already here. Lumi stood up quickly. Here? Daniel nodded. Yes, inside the tunnels. He turned off the bright light on his helmet and replaced it with a weaker beam. We need to move quietly, he said. The mine tunnels were large and confusing. Hundreds of paths moved deep into the ground like a giant maze. Daniel had worked here for 3 years. He knew many secret routes. He took Lumi's hand and began walking through a narrow side tunnel. Stay close to me, he said softly. The two moved quietly through the darkness. Only the sound of their careful footsteps echoed in the long tunnel. After a few minutes, a strange blue light appeared far away behind them. Daniel stopped walking. Someone was coming. He quickly pulled Lumi behind a large mining machine that had been left in the tunnel. Don't make a sound, he whispered. Lumi nodded. The blue light slowly grew brighter. Then Daniel saw them. 3 tall alien soldiers walked through the tunnel. Their armor was black and smooth like metal glass. Their helmets had glowing red eyes. Each soldier carried a long energy weapon. Daniel had seen many alien workers before, but these were not workers. These were hunters. One of them stopped and looked around the tunnel. The soldier held up a scanning device. It made a low humming sound. Daniel held his breath. If the scanner found Lumi's royal DNA, they would be discovered immediately. The device beeped softly. For a moment, the soldier looked directly toward the machine where Daniel and Lumi were hiding. Daniel slowly reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small metal nut from his mining tools. Then he quietly threw it down another tunnel. Clink, the small sound echoed through the empty mine. The soldiers turned their heads instantly. One of them pointed his weapon toward the sound. The leader made a sharp command in an unknown alien language. The three soldiers quickly ran down the other tunnel to investigate. Daniel slowly released his breath. Lumi looked up at him with wide eyes. "That was scary," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Yes, and there will be more." They continued moving deeper into the mine. After several turns, they reached an old storage tunnel that miners no longer used. Broken crates and empty equipment boxes were scattered everywhere. Daniel closed the heavy metal door behind them. For now, they were safe. Lumi sat down on a crate. "Why are they hunting me?" she asked. Daniel sat across from her. "Because you're important," he said. "But I'm just Lumi," she said quietly. Daniel looked at her glowing blue eyes. He remembered the message from her mother. "Princess of the Azurian royal line, you may be small," he said, "but you're important to someone." Lumi looked at the silver device again. "My mommy said it will help me." Daniel leaned forward. "Maybe we should try turning it on again." Lumi placed the device carefully on the crate. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly the small lights began glowing again. The device floated into the air. A hologram appeared once more. But this time it was not Lumi's mother, it was a star map. Dozens of planets filled the glowing image. One planet blinked with bright blue light. Lumi pointed at it. "That's home." Daniel studied the map carefully. But before he could say anything, his scanner suddenly screamed with a loud alarm. "Beep! Beep! Beep!" Daniel grabbed it quickly. His face turned pale. "What's wrong?" Lumi asked. Daniel slowly looked toward the metal door. His voice became very serious. "They found us." Heavy footsteps echoed from the tunnel outside. And this time, there were many soldiers coming. The loud alarm from Daniel's scanner echoed inside the old storage tunnel. Beep! Beep! Daniel quickly turned the sound off, but it was already too late. The heavy footsteps outside the metal door were getting closer. Lumi looked toward the door with fear in her glowing blue eyes. "They found us?" she asked quietly. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes." The footsteps outside stopped. For a moment, everything became silent. Then a deep metallic voice spoke from the other side of the door in a strange alien language. Daniel did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were searching carefully. Lumi moved closer to Daniel. "What do we do?" she whispered. Daniel looked around the old storage tunnel. Broken crates and mining tools were scattered across the floor. Rusted equipment leaned against the walls. The room had only one exit. The metal door. Daniel knew something important. If the soldiers entered, they would see Lumi immediately. There was no place to hide. Daniel took a slow breath. "We don't run," he said quietly. Lumi looked confused. "Then what do we do?" Daniel's eyes moved across the room again. His mind was already working fast. Miners did not have powerful weapons, but mines were full of dangerous tools and dangerous places. Daniel picked up a small box of old mining explosives from the floor. Each explosive was used to break rock deep underground. In the wrong place, they could collapse entire tunnels. Daniel opened the box and checked the devices. 3 small charges. That would be enough. Lumi watched him carefully. "Are those bombs?" she asked. Daniel gave a small smile. "Mining tools," he said. Outside the door, the soldiers began cutting through the metal lock. Sparks flew under the door. They would be inside very soon. Daniel moved quickly. He placed one explosive near a weak support beam in the tunnel wall. Then he placed another near the door frame. The last one he kept in his hand. Lumi's eyes grew wide. "The tunnel will fall," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes, but we're inside the tunnel," she said. Daniel pointed toward a narrow passage behind the broken crates. A small emergency escape path. Miners used it in case of a cave collapse. "We leave before it falls," he said. The cutting noise outside the door suddenly stopped. Daniel grabbed Lumi's hand. Stay close to me. The metal door burst open with a loud crash. 3 black armored alien soldiers stepped inside. Their red glowing helmets scanned the room immediately. One of them raised his weapon, but Daniel was faster. He pressed the detonator in his hand. Boom! The explosive near the door exploded first. The blast threw dust and rocks into the air. The soldiers were pushed backward by the shock. Before they could recover, Daniel pressed the detonator again. Boom! The second charge exploded against the tunnel wall. The ground shook violently. Large pieces of rock crashed down from the ceiling. "Run!" Daniel shouted. He pulled Lumi toward the narrow escape passage. Behind them, the soldiers shouted in anger as the tunnel began collapsing. Rocks fell everywhere. Metal beams snapped like sticks. Daniel and Lumi ran through the small passage as fast as they could. The ground shook again. Boom! The final explosive went off behind them. A massive section of the mine collapsed. The tunnel filled with dust and falling rock. The alien soldiers were buried under thousands of tons of stone. Daniel and Lumi finally stopped running after several minutes. They reached a quiet section of the mine that miners rarely used. Both of them were breathing heavily. Lumi looked back down the tunnel. "Are they gone?" she asked. Daniel checked his scanner. The 3 signals had disappeared. "Yes," he said. Lumi stared at him with amazement. "You fought them?" Daniel shrugged slightly. "I didn't fight," he said. "I just made the mine angry." Lumi smiled a little. For the first time since Daniel found her, she looked less afraid. But the moment did not last long. Daniel's scanner suddenly showed new red signals, many of them. More soldiers were entering the mine from different tunnels. Daniel sighed quietly. That was only the first group. Lumi looked worried again. "There are more," Daniel nodded. "Much more." Lumi slowly looked down at the glowing device in her hands again. The small lights began blinking softly. "Maybe it can help us," she said. Daniel leaned closer to the device. "What does it do?" Lumi shook her head. "I don't know." Suddenly the device floated into the air again. A bright blue light filled the tunnel. But this time, something different happened. Energy waves moved through the walls of the mine. The rock around them began glowing faintly. Daniel stepped back in surprise. "What is happening?" Lumi looked at her hands. They were glowing with the same blue light. Her voice sounded scared. "I think it's reacting to me." The ground trembled softly. Small stones began lifting from the floor, as if gravity had weakened. Daniel stared in shock. The little alien girl was surrounded by glowing energy, and deep inside the mine, something ancient had just awakened. The tunnel was suddenly filled with soft blue light. Daniel Carter stood frozen as small stones slowly lifted from the ground around Lumi. The air itself seemed to move like water, pushing gently against the walls of the mine. Lumi looked down at her glowing hands with wide eyes. I didn't do anything," she said nervously. Daniel believed her. But something powerful was clearly happening. The silver device floating above her hands spun slowly, sending waves of light through the tunnel. The rock walls glowed faintly as if the mine itself was reacting to the energy. Daniel stepped closer but stayed careful. "Lumi," he said calmly, "try to breathe slowly." She nodded and took a deep breath, but the light only grew stronger. The ground trembled again. Daniel quickly checked his scanner. The screen was shaking from the vibrations. New warning messages flashed across the display. Energy level rising, unknown power source detected. Daniel looked at Lumi again. "Is this the star heart your mother talked about?" he asked. Lumi thought for a moment. "My mommy said something about a heart, a star heart," she said slowly. "She said it lives inside our royal blood." Daniel did not fully understand, but he understood one thing very clearly. The alien soldiers searching the mine would definitely detect this energy. And if they found Lumi using this power, they would come faster. Suddenly, the floating device projected another hologram into the air. This time it was not a message, it was information. Symbols and alien letters moved across the glowing screen. Daniel could not read the language, but images began forming. The first image showed Lumi's species, tall silver-skinned beings with glowing blue eyes. The second image showed stars and planets across the galaxy. Then the third image appeared. It showed Lumi. Energy flowed from her body like rivers of light. Daniel stared in silence. "That's you," he said quietly. Lumi looked at the hologram too. "My mommy said the royal family protects the stars," she said. Daniel frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" Before Lumi could answer, Daniel's scanner suddenly beeped again. He looked down quickly. His face became serious. "They detected the energy," he said. Multiple red signals were now moving quickly toward their location. More soldiers were entering the tunnels. Many more. Lumi's glowing light suddenly dimmed slightly as fear crossed her face. "I don't want them to find us," she whispered. Daniel looked around the tunnel. The situation was getting worse. The soldiers were closing in from 3 different directions. The mine tunnels that once helped them escape were now turning into a trap. Daniel ran a hand through his dusty hair. "Okay," he said quietly to himself. "Think like a miner. Miners survive dangerous places by knowing the land better than anyone." Daniel opened the map of the mine on his scanner. Hundreds of tunnels appeared on the screen. Then he saw something interesting. A very deep section of the mine, an old drilling site that had been closed years ago. Very few miners ever went there. It was far below the main tunnels. Daniel looked at Lumi. "We're going deeper," he said. "Deeper?" Lumi asked. "Yes," he answered. "Somewhere they won't expect." They quickly started moving through a narrow downward tunnel. The air became colder as they went deeper underground. The lights from Lumi's device helped them see in the darkness. After several minutes of walking, they reached a large underground cavern. Daniel stopped suddenly. He had worked on Karth 9 for years, but he had never seen this place before. The cavern was enormous, and in the center of the cave stood something strange. A giant crystal formation rose from the ground like a tower. It glowed faintly with the same blue light as Lumi. Lumi stepped forward slowly. Her eyes were wide with wonder. "It feels familiar," she whispered. Daniel looked at the crystal tower. His scanner suddenly showed extreme energy readings. "This wasn't made by miners," he said. The crystal pulsed softly like a heartbeat. Lumi walked closer. As she stepped near it, the crystal suddenly began glowing brighter. Blue energy flowed between Lumi and the crystal like lightning. Daniel stared in shock. The cave filled with powerful light. Lumi lifted slightly from the ground, surrounded by glowing energy. Her voice echoed softly through the cavern. "I can hear it." Daniel looked up at her. "Hear what?" Lumi opened her glowing eyes. "The stars." Before Daniel could say anything else, a loud explosion echoed from the tunnel above. Dust fell from the cave ceiling. Daniel quickly checked his scanner again. His stomach dropped. The soldiers had finally reached the lower tunnels. Hundreds of red signals were now moving toward the cavern. Daniel looked up at Lumi, still floating in glowing light. His voice was serious. "Lumi, we're about to have company, and this time." An entire alien army was coming. The cavern was alive with blue energy. Lumi hovered above the ground, glowing like a small star, her silver hair floating around her head. Daniel Carter crouched behind a jagged rock, watching the narrow tunnels leading into the cavern. The red signals on his scanner showed the soldiers moving closer, faster than he had imagined. "They're almost here," Daniel whispered, his hand tightening on a rusted mining tool. "And they aren't leaving anyone behind this time." Lumi's small voice trembled. "I don't want to hurt anyone." Daniel shook his head. "You won't, Lumi. Not if we do this smart. But we can't let them take you alive." Outside, the first group of alien soldiers reached the mouth of the cavern. Their black armor reflected the blue glow from Lumi's energy, and the red lights on their helmets glared like warning beacons. Each soldier carried an energy rifle designed to pierce walls and rock. Daniel knew one shot could destroy not just him, but the entire crystal cavern that now amplified Lumi's energy. Daniel pulled Lumi down behind a rock. Listen to me. Stay calm. I'll do the distracting. You just let the power flow, okay? Lumi nodded, gripping her glowing device tightly. Sparks of light flickered across the cavern floor as she focused. Daniel stepped forward into the open, just enough to be seen. One of the soldiers raised its weapon immediately. Daniel's heart raced. He had no real weapons, just mining tools and explosives. But he had something the soldiers didn't: knowledge of the mine. He grabbed a handful of loose rocks from the cavern floor and flung them toward the soldiers. The rocks clattered loudly, echoing off the walls. Two of the soldiers turned, aiming their weapons at the noise. Daniel used the distraction to slip behind a crystal pillar and press the detonator in his hand. Boom! The explosion rocked the cavern. Dust and stone flew everywhere. One of the soldiers stumbled, and the energy beam from its weapon went wild, hitting the wall instead of Daniel. Lumi felt the shock from the blast. She gasped, her energy flaring brighter. The crystal tower in the center of the cavern reacted, sending a pulse of light through the air. Daniel shielded his eyes as small stones floated and danced around the cavern, lifted by the energy. Daniel knew they only had a few minutes before reinforcements came. He shouted to Lumi over the roar of energy and falling rock. Now, Lumi, focus your power on them. Lumi's hands glowed brighter, and waves of energy surged forward from her body. The soldiers fired their rifles, but the energy shield that formed around Lumi deflected the blasts. The beams hit the crystal pillars, causing sparks to scatter and some tunnels to partially collapse. Daniel grabbed a jagged piece of crystal from the floor. It was sharp and heavy. With a deep breath, he hurled it toward the soldiers. The crystal spun through the air, hitting one soldier's helmet and cracking it. The soldier staggered and fell back. More soldiers poured into the cavern, but Daniel and Lumi worked together. Each time a soldier moved closer, Lumi's energy shield flared, sending them stumbling back, while Daniel used every mining tool, rock, and explosive he could find to delay their advance. Amid the chaos, Daniel noticed something unusual. The crystal tower at the center seemed to respond to Lumi's power. Pulses of energy shot from the tower to the ceiling and walls, creating a dazzling web of glowing blue light. He realized that the cavern itself was amplifying Lumi's power. Suddenly, the leader of the soldiers, taller and bulkier than the rest, stepped forward. Its red eyes glowed brighter than ever. It raised a large energy staff and aimed it directly at Lumi. "Don't let it hit her," Daniel shouted. He rushed forward and slammed his shoulder into a loose support beam nearby. The beam crashed into the leader, sending it reeling. The staff dropped to the ground, sparking and smoking. Lumi seized the moment. She closed her eyes and extended both hands, sending a massive pulse of energy outwards. The shockwave hit the remaining soldiers like a wave of light. They stumbled, dropped their weapons, and many were thrown against the cavern walls. The pulse was so strong that dust and debris rained down, and the crystal pillars shook violently. Daniel rushed to Lumi's side. She floated down slowly, exhausted but glowing faintly. "Are you okay?" he asked. I think so," Lumi whispered, her blue eyes blinking as she tried to regain control of her power. Daniel nodded. He looked at the shattered soldiers and the wrecked cavern around them. For now, they had won the battle. But Daniel knew it was not over. More soldiers would come, and the Empire would not give up easily. He placed a hand on Lumi's shoulder. "We survived this fight," he said softly. "But there will be more. I promise you, I will protect you, no matter what." Lumi looked up at him with trust and determination in her glowing eyes. "Then I will fight with you," she said quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. "Good, because we're not just running anymore. We're standing our ground." Outside the tunnels, the first echoes of new ships could be heard. The Empire was preparing its next attack. But inside the deep mine, A human and a little alien princess had formed a bond stronger than any army, ready to face whatever came next. And in the heart of the cavern, the crystal tower pulsed with energy, as if it knew the true protector of the last Azurian princess had finally arrived. The blue light from the crystal cavern had faded slightly, leaving soft glows dancing across the walls. Daniel, Carter, and Lumi stood at the center of the cavern, exhausted but alive. The air still hummed with the echoes of her power, and the crystal tower pulsed faintly, like it was breathing. Daniel looked at the little alien girl. She was smaller than any human child he had ever seen, but the way she carried herself now, there was a strength in her he could feel. "Are they gone?" Lumi asked softly. Her hands still glowed faintly, and she clutched the silver device her mother had given her. Daniel shook his head. "Not completely. There will always be others looking for you, but for now, we have a chance to leave this place safely." Lumi's eyes widened. "Leave?" Daniel nodded. "We need to get out of the mine and find somewhere you can be safe. Somewhere far away from the Empire." They moved carefully through the tunnels, using the narrow passageways that Daniel had memorized over years of mining. Every shadow seemed like a threat, but with Lumi's glowing light guiding the way, they were able to avoid detection. After several hours, they emerged into the rocky surface of Carth 9. The planet's sky was dark, but faint stars shone above. Daniel pulled a small communication device from his pocket and sent a signal out to the outer satellites. Minutes later, faint lights appeared in the sky. Not the Empire ships. Friendly ships, the Azurian Alliance. Ships sent to rescue the lost princess. Lumi's eyes sparkled with hope. "They found us?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Yes, but they will need you to be brave. Are you ready?" Before Lumi could answer, one of the Alliance ships landed nearby. The ramp extended, and tall figures in silver armor stepped out. They looked at Lumi and Daniel carefully. One of them, an older Azurian with calm, glowing eyes, stepped forward. "You are Princess Lumi," he said, his voice formal but kind. Lumi nodded slowly. "Yes, I am." The Azurian leader looked at Daniel. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke with respect. "And you are the human who protected our princess?" Daniel shrugged. "I'm just a miner. I didn't want her to be hurt." The Azurian studied him carefully. Then, to Daniel's surprise, he nodded. "You are more than a miner. You are family." Lumi's small hand reached for Daniel's. She gripped it tightly. "I don't want to leave my dad," she said softly, looking up at him. Daniel's heart clenched. He was not her father by blood. He had no children, but hearing those words, he felt something he had never felt before. Responsibility, love, protection. "You'll always be my little star," he said quietly. The Azurian leader stepped forward. "The human who protects the princess will always be part of her family," he repeated, confirming the words from the hologram message of Lumi's mother. Daniel looked at Lumi and nodded. "Come on, let's go home." As they boarded the Alliance ship, Lumi looked back at the planet below. The mines, the tunnels, the crystal cavern where her power had awakened. It all seemed so small now. But it was where she had found her protector. The ship rose above Carth 9, leaving the dark, dusty planet behind. Daniel and Lumi sat together as the stars stretched across the windows. Lumi's small hand remained in his. "Dad," she whispered after a moment. Daniel smiled softly. "Yes, Lumi? Thank you for saving me. For being my dad." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest he had never known. "I promise. I will always protect you." As the ship moved farther into space, the galaxy seemed vast and endless. But for the first time, Daniel realized he was not alone in it. He had a mission greater than mining, greater than survival. He was protecting the last Azurian princess. Years later, when Lumi became queen and ruled the stars, she would never forget the human miner who had heard her cry in the dark. He was the one who had saved her life, protected her when no one else could, and became the father she had always wanted. And in the stories of the Azurian people, The tale of Lumi and her human protector spread across worlds, a story of courage, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a lost alien princess and the man who chose to be her father. In the vast galaxy, enemies would come and go, wars would rage, empires would rise and fall. But one truth remained. A human had stood against impossible odds. A little alien girl had awakened power beyond imagining. And together, they had changed the course of the stars. The galaxy would always remember. And in the heart of that human miner, in the quiet of the star-filled night, he knew that he was no longer just a miner. He was a father, and Lumi. She was his daughter. The stars outside the ship gleamed as if they understood the bond forming inside. A bond stronger than war. Stronger than fear. Stronger than time itself. Together, they were ready for whatever the galaxy would throw at them next.